The rain had stopped an hour before the funeral began, but the sky over Portland remained heavy with clouds that refused to move. Rose Garden Cemetery stretched across 15 acres of perfectly manicured grass, dotted with ancient oak trees whose branches reached toward the gray November sky like weathered hands. 200 mourners stood in clusters of black, their breath visible in the cold afternoon air, their faces drawn with the kind of grief that comes from losing someone too young, too suddenly, too senselessly. Kate Morrison's funeral was everything a society event should be. The guest list read like a directory of Portland's elite: CEOs from the tech corridor, city council members, philanthropists whose names adorned buildings downtown. They came in black Mercedes and Tesla sedans, parking in neat rows along the cemetery's main drive. They wore designer suits and Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people earned in a month. They spoke in hushed tones about what a tragedy it all was, how unexpected, how devastating for poor James and little Emma. At the center of it all sat the casket, solid walnut, polished to a mirror shine, adorned with white lilies and roses that filled the air with their cloying sweetness. The wood gleamed under the diffused light, expensive and immaculate, the kind of casket that cost $30,000 and was meant to show respect, meant to show love, meant to show that no expense had been spared for Kate Morrison's final rest. The casket was closed, sealed shut. Not a single person had seen what lay inside. On top of that polished surface rested a single photograph in an ornate silver frame. Kate Morrison at 34, wearing a scarlet-red dress that had been her favorite, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, her smile bright and genuine, the kind of smile that made you believe everything would be okay. The photo had been taken 2 years ago at a charity gala. She had been radiant that night, alive, full of plans and dreams and all the possibilities that come with being young and wealthy and in love. Now that photograph was all that remained visible of her, a frozen moment, a memory captured in silver and glass. Father Benedict stood near the head of the casket, his white vestments bright against the gray day, his prayer book open in weathered hands. He had presided over hundreds of funerals in his 40 years as a priest, but this one weighed on him differently. Kate Morrison had been a regular at Sunday services. She had volunteered at the church's soup kitchen. She had been kind, genuinely kind, the rare sort of wealthy person who looked you in the eye and remembered your name. Her death had been ruled an accident, a drowning in the Columbia River during a morning jog, her body supposedly too damaged by rocks and current to be viewed. Something about the story had never sat quite right with Father Benedict, but he was a man of faith, not investigation. His job was to comfort the living and commend the dead to God's mercy. James Morrison sat in the front row, a man carved from stone. At 52 years old, he looked every day of it today. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, but his face was haggard, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights, jaw clenched so tight the muscles jumped. He wore a black Tom Ford suit that fit him perfectly, the uniform of a tech billionaire who had built Morrison Technologies from a garage startup into an $800 million empire. His hands rested on his knees, fingers interlaced, knuckles white with tension. He had not cried, not once, not when they told him they had found her body, not when he identified her wedding ring at the morgue, not when he planned this funeral, making decisions about flowers and music and burial plots, with the mechanical efficiency of a man who had shut down every emotion to survive. James Morrison had learned long ago that showing weakness was dangerous. In business, in life, in grief. So he sat rigid and silent while Father Benedict spoke about eternal rest in the comfort of God's grace, words that meant nothing, changed nothing, brought back no one. Beside him sat his mother, Helen Morrison, 75 years old, and dressed head to toe in black Chanel. She clutched a handkerchief in one trembling hand, dabbing at eyes that had run out of tears hours ago. Helen had lost her husband to cancer 10 years prior. She had buried her own parents, her sister, countless friends. But burying her daughter-in-law, a woman she had loved like her own child, was a cruelty that made her question if there was any justice in the world at all. And next to Helen, holding her grandmother's hand in a grip that was far too tight for a 6-year-old, sat Emma Morrison. Emma wore a black velvet dress that her grandmother had bought for the occasion, with white tights and black Mary Janes that pinched her toes. Her blonde hair, so much like her mother's, had been pulled back in a neat braid. Her face was pale, eyes enormous and unblinking as she stared at the photograph on the casket. She did not fully understand what was happening. Adults had tried to explain. They had used gentle words like gun in heaven and watching over you. But Emma was 6 years old, and the only thing she understood with absolute certainty was that her mommy was not coming home. She had asked her father 3 times this morning where mommy was. James had not answered. He had simply turned away, his face a mask, and left Helen to fumble through some explanation about angels and peace and being in a better place now. Emma had stopped asking after that. She learned early that some questions only brought silence. The service moved forward with practiced precision. Father Benedict read from the Gospel. A soprano sang Ave Maria, her voice soaring and breaking in all the right places. James's business partner gave a eulogy about Kate's charitable work, her warmth, her dedication to making the world better. People nodded and murmured agreement. Tissues were pulled from purses and pockets. The performance of grief played out exactly as society demanded. No one noticed the little girl standing at the far edge of the cemetery. Mia Chen was 7 years old, small for her age, with straight black hair, cut blunt at her shoulders, and dark eyes that missed nothing. She wore a faded blue cotton dress that had been washed so many times the color had softened to almost gray, and canvas sneakers with holes worn in the toes. She did not belong here among the wealthy mourners in their designer blacks. She had no invitation, no connection to the Morrison family that anyone could see. She had simply followed an instinct, a pull she could not explain, that had led her from her grandmother's apartment in Southeast Portland to the cemetery on the west side of town. Mia stood behind a massive headstone, using it for cover, watching everything. She had arrived an hour before the funeral started, had watched the mourners gather, had seen the casket wheeled into place. She had studied every face, looking for something, though she was not entirely sure what. Her heart had been beating fast since she left home, adrenaline making her hands shake, because she knew what she was about to do was crazy. Her grandmother would be furious if she found out. But Mia's mother had taught her something before she died 6 months ago, something that echoed in Mia's mind right now like a commandment. Always tell the truth, her mother had said, even when it's scary, even when no one will believe you. The truth matters more than being comfortable. The truth can save lives, and Mia knew a truth that no one else in this cemetery knew. A truth that made her stomach hurt and her throat tight. A truth that she had been carrying around for 3 days like a stone in her pocket, growing heavier with each hour. Father Benedict was nearing the end of the service. His voice rose and fell in the familiar cadences of blessing and commendation. The mourners bowed their heads. James Morrison stared straight ahead at nothing. Emma squeezed her grandmother's hand harder, and Mia Chen made her decision. She stepped out from behind the headstone. Her sneakers made no sound on the grass as she walked forward. Slow at first, then faster, her small legs carrying her across the manicured lawn toward the gathering. People at the edges of the crowd noticed her first. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat nudged her husband and pointed. A security guard hired to manage the funeral took a step forward, confused about how this child had gotten past him. Mia did not stop. She walked through the crowd, squeezing between adults who towered over her, making her way toward the casket at the center of it all. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Her hands were cold, despite the gloves her grandmother had insisted she wear. But she kept moving, kept pushing forward, because this was bigger than her fear, bigger than her certainty that she would be yelled at or worse. Father Benedict noticed her when she was 10 feet from the casket. His words stumbled, trailed off. He looked down at this tiny girl in her threadbare dress, appearing like an apparition in the middle of his carefully orchestrated service. The crowd sensed the disruption, heads turning, voices murmuring in confusion. Mia reached the casket. She was so small that the top of her head barely cleared the edge of it. She had to look up at the photograph of Kate Morrison, at that beautiful woman in the red dress smiling forever in that frozen moment. Mia's breath came fast and shallow. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to be invisible. But she thought of her mother in that hospital bed, thought of the USB drive hidden under her pillow at home, thought of the woman she had seen 3 days ago standing in a window on Northwest Everett Street. She lifted her right arm, small finger pointing directly at the photograph. Her voice when it came out was clear and steady, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd like a bell. "She's not dead." The words hung in the cold air. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The entire cemetery seemed to freeze, 200 people turning into statues, their faces registering shock, confusion, offense. Mia's hand did not waver. She kept pointing at that photograph, at Kate Morrison's smiling face. "She's not dead," Mia repeated louder now, her 7-year-old voice carrying across the silent gathering. "I saw that lady alive 3 days ago." The reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman near the front let out a choked sob that might have been horror or disbelief. Men in expensive suits exchanged glances, eyebrows raised, mouths opening to say something but finding no words. The security guard started moving toward Mia, his face stern, ready to remove this disruptive child from the proceedings. But before he could reach her, James Morrison stood up. He rose slowly like a man in a dream, his movements deliberate and careful as if he feared he might shatter. His face had gone completely white, all color draining away, leaving him looking like a ghost himself. His eyes, those red-rimmed, exhausted eyes, locked onto Mia with an intensity that made several people take a step back. "What did you say?" His voice was barely a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the cemetery, it carried perfectly. Mia turned to face him. This tall man in his perfect black suit, this powerful man who owned buildings and companies and could probably make her and her grandmother disappear with a phone call. She should have been terrified. Part of her was, but mostly she just felt tired. Tired of carrying this secret. Tired of being afraid. "I saw her," Mia said, speaking directly to James Morrison, this stranger who looked like he was about to collapse. 3 days ago, Thursday afternoon, she was standing in a window on Northwest Everett Street. I saw her face. It's the same face as in that picture." James took one step toward her, then another. His legs seemed unsteady, as if he had forgotten how to walk. Helen Morrison reached out to steady him, but he shook her off, his attention focused entirely on this little girl in her faded dress. "You're sure?" The question came out cracked, broken. "You're absolutely sure it was her?" Mia nodded. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. Same face, same eyes. Her hair was different, tied up instead of down. But it was her. I looked right at her, and she looked right at me. The crowd erupted, voices talking over each other, some angry, some confused, some hushed in scandal. A man in a gray suit shouted that this was inappropriate, that someone needed to remove this child immediately. A woman suggested the girl was clearly disturbed, seeking attention. Father Benedict stood frozen, his prayer book forgotten in his hands, trying to process what was happening to his carefully planned service. But James Morrison heard none of it. His entire world had narrowed to this 7-year-old girl and the words coming out of her mouth. His wife was dead. They had told him so. The police had told him. The medical examiner had told him. They had shown him her wedding ring, her running shoes, her jacket torn and waterlogged. They had explained about the damage the river does to a body, about how sometimes it's better not to see, better to remember them as they were. And he had accepted it because he had no reason not to. Because the thought of demanding to see her broken body was too horrible to contemplate. Because he wanted to preserve his last memories of her alive and beautiful and whole. But now this child was telling him something different, something impossible, something that made his heart pound so hard his vision began to swim. He turned away from Mia, turned to face the casket with its spray of white flowers and its photograph and its solid walnut construction. $30,000 of craftsmanship and care. A final resting place fit for the wife of a billionaire. "Open it." His voice was steady now, cold and clear as winter water. Father Benedict blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Open the casket." James did not look at the priest. His eyes stayed fixed on that polished wood surface. "Open it right now." "Mr. Morrison, I don't think that's wise. Given the condition of the body, perhaps it's better to remember your wife as she was. This will only cause you more pain." James's head whipped around, his eyes blazing with something that looked like fury or hope, or both tangled together. Open it, or I will rip it open myself right now in front of everyone. The crowd had gone silent again, watching this confrontation between grief and protocol. Helen Morrison stood up, one hand pressed to her own mouth, her face terrified. Emma remained seated, too small to fully understand what was happening, but sensing the tectonic shift in the air, the way everything suddenly felt dangerous and unknown. Father Benedict looked to the funeral director, a small man in his 60s who had been standing discreetly to one side. The funeral director's face had gone pale. He stepped forward, wringing his hands. Mr. Morrison, the casket was sealed at the morgue. It would be highly unusual to open it now in this setting, with your daughter present. Perhaps if we could arrange a private viewing later. Now, James's voice cracked like a whip. Every person in the cemetery flinched. Open it now, or I call the police, and they open it as part of an investigation into fraud and whatever the hell else I can think of to charge you with. The funeral director and Father Benedict exchanged a long look. Then the funeral director nodded slowly, defeat in the slope of his shoulders. He gestured to two of his assistants who had been standing near the hearse. They came forward with tools, their movements reluctant, glancing at each other as if hoping someone would intervene and stop this madness. The crowd pressed closer, unable to help themselves, drawn by the same morbid curiosity that makes people slow down at car accidents. Helen Morrison pulled Emma close, turning the little girl's face into her side, trying to shield her from whatever was about to happen. Mia stood very still near the casket, her fingers still pointing, even though no one was looking at her anymore. The assistants worked quietly, efficiently, removing the spray of flowers and setting them aside. They produced keys and tools, working on the sealed locks that held the casket closed. Each click and scrape of metal seemed impossibly loud in the waiting silence. James Morrison stood 3 feet away, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw set so tight his teeth ached. The final lock released with a soft snick. The two assistants looked to their director, who nodded grimly. They grasped the edge of the casket lid, one on each side. They lifted slowly, reverently, the hinges moving with barely a whisper. The lid opened, rose up, revealed what lay inside. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, no one moved. No one breathed. The entire cemetery existed in a bubble of suspended time, everyone's mind trying to process what their eyes were seeing, trying to make it make sense, trying to reconcile expectation with reality. Then Helen Morrison screamed. The casket was empty, completely, utterly, impossibly empty. No body, no remains, no waterlogged clothing or carefully arranged form, just white satin lining, pristine and untouched, stretched over the interior like snow that had never been disturbed. The pillow where a head should have rested lay smooth and perfect. The space where Kate Morrison was supposed to be resting for eternity contained nothing but air and the faint smell of fresh fabric. The crowd erupted into chaos. People shouted, pushed forward trying to see, pulled back in shock. Cell phones appeared, cameras flashing despite the impropriety. The security guard spoke urgently into his radio, calling for backup he had no idea how to deploy. Father Benedict dropped his prayer book, and it landed in the wet grass with a soft thump that no one heard over the noise. James Morrison did not move. He stood staring down into that empty casket with an expression on his face that was beyond shock, beyond grief, beyond anything with a name. His mouth hung slightly open. His eyes were wide and unblinking. One hand came up slowly, reaching toward the empty space as if he could somehow feel what was not there, as if his fingers might find some invisible truth hidden in the satin. His fingers touched the fabric. Cold, real, empty. I don't understand. The words came out barely audible, spoken to no one, a man talking to himself trying to process the impossible. They said they found her. They said identification was positive. They said. He turned, looking wildly around at the crowd, at the faces of friends and colleagues and strangers all staring back at him with expressions of shock and pity and confusion. His eyes found Detective Linda Martinez, a tall woman with gray-streaked hair who had been standing at the back of the gathering. Not family, but present out of respect. She was already moving forward, her detective's mind racing, her hand already reaching for her phone. Detective, James's voice broke on the word. Detective, What does this mean? Where is my wife? Where is my wife? Martinez reached him in seconds, her face grave but controlled, the professional mask of someone who had seen terrible things and learned to keep functioning. Mr. Morrison, I need you to step back from the casket right now. This is a crime scene. Crime scene? James laughed, a horrible sound that had nothing to do with humor. Crime scene? I buried my wife, except I didn't because she's not here. She's not dead. Or she is dead, but somewhere else. Or she never was dead. Or his voice spiraled up, control slipping, the carefully constructed walls he had built around his emotions beginning to crack and crumble. Helen Morrison appeared at his side, Emma still clutched against her hip, the little girl's face buried against her grandmother's shoulder. Helen took James's arm, her grip surprisingly strong for a 75-year-old woman. James, look at me. She spoke firmly, cutting through this spiral. Look at me, son. He turned to her, his face the face of a drowning man. We're going to figure this out, Helen said, speaking with more confidence than she felt. Detective Martinez is here. The police will investigate. We will find out what happened. But right now you need to breathe. Can you do that? Can you breathe for me? James nodded, but the motion was jerky, mechanical. He sucked in air like a man who had been underwater, his chest heaving. Around them, Martinez was already barking orders, directing the funeral home staff to preserve everything, not to touch anything while calling for a forensic team and additional officers. The cemetery had transformed from a place of mourning to an active investigation in the span of 5 minutes. And through it all, Mia Chen stood quietly beside the empty casket, watching James Morrison come apart at the seams. She felt no satisfaction at being right. She felt only a deep weariness and a growing fear about what came next. Because if Kate Morrison was not dead, if she was alive somewhere, then that meant someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make the world think otherwise. Someone had filed a death certificate, had arranged a funeral, had sealed an empty casket, and was prepared to bury it and let everyone believe a lie. Someone very dangerous. James Morrison's eyes found Mia again. He stared at her for a long moment, this little girl in her faded dress who had just blown his entire world apart. Then he did something unexpected. He crossed the distance between them and knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. Up close, Mia could see that he had been handsome once, before grief carved lines into his face. She could see that his eyes were the same dark blue as the winter ocean. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Mia Chen. Mia Chen. He repeated it like he was memorizing something important. "You said you saw her 3 days ago. Thursday." Mia nodded. "Can you show me where?" Another nod. James held out his hand. It was shaking slightly, trembling with adrenaline and shock, and something that might have been hope. "Will you show me, please?" Mia looked at that outstretched hand, at this powerful man brought to his knees in front of her, asking for help. She thought about her mother, about truth, about doing what was right even when it was terrifying. She reached out and took his hand. It was warm and dry and held hers gently, carefully, like she was something precious. "Okay," she said simply. "I'll show you." Detective Martinez appeared at James's shoulder, her phone already pressed to her ear, coordinating with headquarters. She looked down at the unlikely pair, the billionaire and the 7-year-old, and understood immediately what was happening. "Mr. Morrison, if this child has information relevant to your wife's disappearance, I need to take her statement formally." James stood, still holding Mia's hand. "Then let's go. Right now." "James?" Helen's voice cut in, worried. "Emma, you can't just leave Emma here." He turned to his mother and daughter, seeing them as if from very far away. Emma had lifted her face from Helen's shoulder and was looking at him with those enormous blue eyes. Kate's eyes, full of confusion and fear, and the beginning of understanding that something was very wrong. "Mom, can you take Emma home? Stay with her. I'll call you as soon as I can." Helen opened her mouth to argue, to say that he was in no state to go anywhere, that he needed to sit down and process and let the professionals handle this. But she saw something in her son's face that stopped her, a determination that was almost frightening in its intensity. "All right," she said quietly, "but James, please, be careful." He nodded once, not trusting himself to speak. Then he turned back to Detective Martinez. "Let's go." The three of them made their way through the crowd, which parted like water, Everyone staring, phones still recording, whispers following them like smoke. Behind them, the empty casket sat open to the gray sky, white flowers scattered around its base, a photograph of a smiling woman in red propped against its side. The funeral that was supposed to provide closure had instead ripped open questions that had never existed before. James Morrison walked to his black Mercedes, opened the back door for Mia Chen, and climbed into the driver's seat. Detective Martinez got into her own vehicle, a plain sedan that screamed unmarked police car. They pulled away from Rose Garden Cemetery in a small convoy, leaving behind the shocked mourners in the empty grave and the beginning of a mystery that would reshape everything they thought they knew. In the back seat, Mia pressed her face to the window, watching the cemetery recede. Her hand slipped into her jacket pocket, where she could feel the small USB drive her mother had given her. She had not told anyone about it yet. She was not sure when to mention it, when to reveal that there was more to this story than just seeing a woman in a window. But she would tell them soon. She would tell them everything. Because her mother had been right. The truth mattered. The truth could save lives. And somewhere in Portland, Kate Morrison was still alive, still waiting, still hoping someone would find her before it was too late. The rain began to fall again as they drove away, soft at first, then harder, washing over the city like tears. The drive from Rose Garden Cemetery to Northwest Everett Street took 17 minutes through Portland's wet streets. James Morrison gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white, his eyes fixed on the road with an intensity that made normal driving look casual by comparison. In the rearview mirror, he could see Mia Chen sitting very still in the back seat, her small hands folded in her lap, her face turned toward the window, watching the city pass by in streaks of gray and green. Detective Linda Martinez followed close behind in her unmarked sedan, her phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with the precinct. James could imagine the conversation. Empty casket at the Morrison funeral. Possible homicide investigation. Possible fraud. Possible something they did not have a name for yet. He had been on the other end of those kinds of calls before, back when Morrison Technologies was smaller and he still handled security issues personally. He knew how the system worked, knew the protocols and procedures that would now grind into motion. But knowing did not make this feel any less surreal. His wife was supposed to be dead. He had grieved her, had planned her funeral down to the flower arrangements, had written a eulogy he could not bring himself to read, had made peace, or tried to, with the fact that Kate was gone and he would spend the rest of his life with a Kate-shaped hole in his chest. Except now this child in his back seat was telling him that Kate was alive, had seen her 3 days ago, which meant everything he thought he knew was wrong, which meant the police had lied or been lied to, which meant someone had orchestrated an elaborate deception involving death certificates and morgue identifications and funeral arrangements, which meant his wife was out there somewhere, alive, possibly in danger, possibly being held against her will. The implications crashed over him in waves that made it hard to breathe. James forced air into his lungs, forced his hands to relax their death grip on the wheel. He needed to think clearly, needed to be useful. Falling apart would not help Kate. It would not help anyone. Mia. His voice came out rough, unused. He cleared his throat and tried again. Mia, can you tell me exactly what you saw on Thursday? Everything you remember. In the mirror, he saw her turn away from the window to look at him. Her face was solemn, older than 7 years should make anyone. I was walking, she said quietly. I like to walk around the city. My grandmother says I shouldn't go so far by myself, but I'm careful. I stay where there are people and I don't talk to strangers. What time was this? Around 3 o'clock, in the afternoon. School was out and Grandma was working, so I just walked. James nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. 3 in the afternoon, 3 days ago, Thursday. He had been in Seattle that day, meeting with investors about the new data center expansion. He had not even been in Portland, had not been there to protect his wife, to notice something was wrong, to do anything that might have prevented whatever happened. I was on Northwest Everett, Mia continued, near the Pearl District. There are some old buildings there, kind of run down. I was just looking around and I saw this one house, red brick, 3 stories. It looked empty, but there was someone in the window on the 2nd floor. And you're certain it was my wife? Yes, sir. No hesitation in her voice. I saw the picture at the funeral, same face, same shape. The lady in the window had her hair pulled back, but it was definitely the same person. She looked right at me. We made eye contact for maybe 5 seconds. Then she stepped back and disappeared. James took a left turn, following Mia's directions. His mind was already racing through possibilities. If Kate was being held somewhere, if she was a prisoner, then whoever had her might have moved her by now. The funeral had been public, announced in the papers. If someone was watching, if someone knew that their deception had been discovered, they would act. They would relocate Kate, or worse. He pushed that thought away violently. He could not afford to think about worse right now. Detective Martinez's voice came over his car's Bluetooth, making him jump. She had called his cell and it had auto-connected through the vehicle's system. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand something before we get to this location. If your wife is being held against her will, this becomes a hostage situation. You cannot, under any circumstances, try to engage or rescue her yourself. Do you understand me? You will let my team handle this." "Your team," James said flatly. "The same police department that told me my wife was dead, that showed me a wedding ring and said it belonged to her, that issued a death certificate without ever letting me see the body? That team?" Silence on the line. Then Martinez's voice, harder now. "I understand your anger, but acting on emotion will get people killed, potentially including your wife. So I'm asking you one more time. Will you let us handle this?" James wanted to say no, wanted to tell her he would burn down every building in Portland if that's what it took to find Kate. But he was not a stupid man. He was not a reckless man. And he had a 6-year-old daughter who needed at least one parent to survive this nightmare. "I'll cooperate," he said through clenched teeth. "But if you find her, if Kate is in that building, I'm going in. I don't care what your protocols say. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Take the next right." The Pearl District was one of Portland's success stories, a formerly industrial neighborhood transformed over 2 decades into an arts and dining destination. But that transformation had been uneven. Between the renovated warehouses turned into lofts and galleries, there remained pockets of the old Pearl, buildings that had not been bought up by developers, structures that sat quietly moldering, while property values skyrocketed around them. The house Mia directed them to was one of those forgotten places. 3 stories of red brick, windows dark with grime, a chain-link fence around a small yard choked with weeds. A faded for lease sign hung at an angle on the fence, so old the phone number was barely legible. The building had the particular look of abandonment, the sense that no one had cared about it in years. James pulled his Mercedes to the curb across the street. Martinez parked behind him. For a long moment, they all just sat there, staring at the house. It looked empty. It looked harmless. It looked like nothing at all. But somewhere in James's chest, his heart was hammering like it knew something his brain did not. "That's it?" he asked Mia. "That's the building?" "Yes, sir. 2nd floor, 3rd window from the left. That's where I saw her." Detective Martinez appeared at James's window. He rolled it down and she leaned in, her gray eyes scanning the building with professional assessment. "I'm calling for backup," she said. "Tactical team will be here in 20 minutes. In the meantime, we observe. We do not approach. Clear?" James nodded. 20 minutes felt like an eternity, but he understood the necessity. If Kate was in there, if someone was holding her, rushing in could trigger a violent response. Better to wait, to do this right, to maximize the chances of getting her out safely. Martinez pulled out her phone and stepped away, speaking in the clipped, efficient tones of a cop coordinating a potential rescue operation. James turned in his seat to look at Mia. "You did the right thing," he told her, "at the funeral. Speaking up. That took a lot of courage." Mia's face remained solemn. "My mother always said to tell the truth, even when it's scary." "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She died 6 months ago. Cancer." Mia said it matter-of-factly, the way children sometimes state terrible truths without flinching. "She was a nurse. She took care of people. Before she died, she told me things. Important things." Something in her tone made James's attention sharpen. "What kind of things?" Mia's hand went to her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small USB drive, black plastic worn at the edges from handling. She held it up so James could see. My mother worked at Mercy Hospital. She did private nursing sometimes too, for people who could afford it. She took care of your wife before the accident, before Mrs. Morrison died. James felt the world tilt sideways. What? 5 years ago, your first wife, Catherine, so my mother was her nurse. The name hit him like a physical blow. Catherine, his first wife, Emma's birth mother, the woman who had died when Emma was barely 1 year old, killed in a car accident that James had been driving. He had not heard her name spoken aloud in years. He never said it himself, the guilt too sharp, too cutting. How do you know about Catherine? His voice came out barely above a whisper. My mother told me, before she died. She said if anything ever happened, if I ever heard the Morrison name in the news, I should pay attention. She said there were things that didn't add up. What things? Mia held up the USB drive. It's all on here. My mother recorded conversations. She kept notes. She said someone tried to hurt Mrs. Catherine before the accident. She said there was a woman who came to see her who said terrible things. James's heart was hammering now, his mouth dry. 5 years ago, Catherine's accident had been investigated thoroughly. Or so he thought. The police had ruled it accidental. Wet roads, late night, driver fatigue. James had accepted that ruling because blaming himself was easier than imagining something more sinister. But now this child was telling him that Catherine might have been murdered, that someone had targeted her, and the only person who had been close enough to both Catherine and Kate, close enough to both women in James's life, was Veronica. He said the name like a curse. Detective Martinez appeared at the window again. She saw something in James's face that made her frown. What is it? What's wrong? My wife, James said slowly, his mind assembling pieces he should have seen years ago. My current wife, Veronica. She's been with me for 2 years. We met at a charity gala. She was charming, supportive, everything I needed after years of being alone. But I never looked into her background, never questioned her past. She said she wanted to leave it behind, start fresh, and I respected that. I thought I respected that. You think your wife is involved in this? Martinez's tone was sharp, cop instincts activated. She's not my wife. The words tasted like poison. Her real name is Victoria Hayes. She was Kate's business partner. They founded a fashion company together, Morrison and Hayes Couture. It failed 3 years ago, spectacular bankruptcy. Kate got out early, before the worst of it. Victoria blamed her. Publicly, viciously. Then Victoria disappeared and Kate moved on, and I thought that was the end of it. Except it wasn't. Except Victoria came back with a new face and a new name and married me. Married the husband of the woman she blamed for destroying her life. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Martinez's expression had gone from concern to grim. She pulled out her phone again, already dialing. I need a full background on Veronica Morrison, she said to whoever answered. Real name Victoria Hayes. I want everything. Financial records, travel history, associates, and I need it 10 minutes ago. In the back seat, Mia sat quietly, still holding the USB drive. James turned to look at her again. What's on that drive? What did your mother record? I don't know exactly. She told me not to listen to it unless I really needed to. She said it was dangerous, but she said it proved that someone tried to hurt Mrs. Catherine before the accident, that there were threats, warnings, that a woman came to the hospital and said terrible things. James took the USB drive from Mia's small hand. The plastic was warm from her grip. Such a small thing to contain such potentially explosive information. He wanted to plug it in right now, wanted to hear what Catherine had endured in her final weeks. But this was evidence. This needed to be handled properly. He handed it to Detective Martinez. You need to hear what's on this. Martinez took the drive, her eyes sharp. Where did you get this? Her mother recorded it. She was Catherine Morrison's nurse 5 years ago. She's dead now, but she left this with her daughter. Martinez looked at Mia with new understanding. You've been carrying this around since your mother died? Mia nodded. She said to give it to someone who would listen, someone who would care. We'll care, Martinez promised, and we'll make sure you're safe too. If Victoria Hayes knows you exist, knows what your mother knew. She did not finish the sentence. She did not have to. Movement at the house across the street made them all freeze. The front door, which had been closed and presumably locked, swung slowly open. For a heart-stopping moment, James thought Kate was going to walk out, that this would all be resolved right here and now, but instead a man emerged, tall, heavy-set, wearing jeans and a gray hoodie. He looked up and down the street, nervous, checking for observers. Martinez had her phone up instantly, photographing him. James stared at the man's face, trying to place it, knowing he had seen this person before but unable to remember where. Marcus Cole, Martinez said quietly, looking at the photo she had just taken. He worked for you, didn't he, Mr. Morrison, your driver? And then James remembered. Marcus Cole, his former chauffeur. Employed by the Morrison household for 8 years until James fired him 18 months ago for reasons he could barely recall now. Some kind of misconduct, inappropriate behavior. James had not asked too many questions, had just signed off on the termination when his head of security recommended it. What's Marcus Cole doing here? James's voice was tight. Good question. Martinez was already on her phone again, speaking rapidly to her backup units. Suspect on scene, white male, 40s, 6'2", 200-plus pounds, approaching vehicle now. Marcus Cole had indeed walked to a beat-up Honda Civic parked on the street and climbed inside. He started the engine, glanced once more at the house, then pulled away, driving slowly down the street. Follow him? James asked. Already on it. I've got units tracking. Martinez watched the Honda disappear around a corner. But we're not leaving this location unattended. If your wife is in there, we need to secure the scene. So we wait. We wait. Waiting was torture. James sat in his Mercedes, hands gripping the steering wheel again, watching that open door and those dark windows for any sign of movement. Mia had gone silent in the back seat, her face pressed to the window, her breath fogging the glass. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Backup arrived in a rush of silent vehicles, black SUVs and unmarked cars disgorging tactical officers in body armor. They moved with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter, checking sight lines, communicating through headsets in voices too low to hear. Martinez conferred with the team leader, a compact man with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Then the team leader approached James's car. He crouched down so they were eye level. Sir, I'm Lieutenant Briggs. We're going to enter that structure now. I need you to stay in your vehicle, engine running, ready to leave if things go sideways. Is that understood? My wife might be in there, which is exactly why you're staying here. If she is in there, the last thing she needs is for you to get shot because you got in my team's way. Sir, with respect, let us do our job. James wanted to argue, but the look in Briggs's eyes told him it would be pointless. He nodded once, tightly. Find her. Please. That's the plan, sir. Briggs returned to his team. They formed up in 2 groups, 6 officers total, moving toward the house with weapons drawn and every sense alert. James watched them disappear through that open door, swallowed by the darkness inside. Then came the worst part. The waiting while they cleared the building, the imagining of what they might find, the desperate hoping that Kate was in there, Olim, unharmed, waiting to be rescued. The silence stretched. 2 minutes. 5. 8. Then Briggs emerged from the house, walking back toward Martinez. His face was unreadable. James's hands tightened on the wheel, his heart in his throat. Martinez and Briggs talked for perhaps 30 seconds. Then Martinez turned and walked to James's car. The expression on her face made his stomach drop. She's not there, Martinez said before he could ask. The buildings have been occupied recently, but it's empty now. We found evidence of someone living there. Food wrappers, blankets, signs of extended habitation. But no one's inside. Evidence of who was there? James forced the words out past the crushing disappointment. We're processing it now, but Mr. Morrison, there's something you need to see. Martinez led him to the house. James got out of the car on shaking legs, leaving Mia safely locked inside with explicit instructions not to move. He followed the detective through the front door into a dim hallway that smelled of mold and old wood. Up a flight of stairs, the treads creaking under their feet, into a second-floor room that might have been a bedroom once. Someone had been living here. A mattress on the floor, still bearing the impression of a body. A card table with 2 mugs sitting on it, one still wet inside. A luxury blanket, completely out of place in this decrepit setting, folded neatly in the corner. But what Martinez wanted him to see was on the wall. Photographs, dozens of them, pinned up with thumbtacks in neat rows. All of Kate. Kate shopping downtown. Kate at a restaurant. Kate leaving Mercy Hospital where she volunteered. Kate walking in their neighborhood. A surveillance photo essay chronicling her movements over what looked like months. And in the center of it all, one photograph larger than the rest. Kate at their wedding 2 years ago, radiant in white, James beside her, smiling. But James's face had been scratched out, violent pen marks obliterating his features. Only a Kate remained intact, preserved, obsessed over. Someone's been watching her for a long time, Martinez said quietly. This level of surveillance takes planning, resources, obsession. James stared at the wall of photographs and felt something inside him turn cold and hard. This was not random. This was not opportunistic. This was someone who had been planning this for years. Someone who had insinuated themselves into his life for the specific purpose of destroying it. Veronica did this, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless, the fury too large to have a shape yet. Victoria Hayes. She married me to get close to Kate, to hurt her. That's our working theory. We've got an APB out for her now, all airports, train stations, border crossings. If she tries to leave Portland, we'll know. She won't run. James was certain of this with a certainty that came from somewhere deep in his gut. She didn't go through all this just to run. She has Kate somewhere else, somewhere she thinks is safe, and she's going to make me suffer before she ends this. We'll find her, Martinez promised. But James could hear the doubt underneath. Portland was a big city. There were a million places to hide someone. A million places where Kate could be slowly running out of time. They returned to the street where Mia still sat in the Mercedes. James climbed back into the driver's seat, but made no move to start the engine. He just sat there, staring at nothing, his mind racing through possibilities and coming up empty every time. His phone rang, unknown number. He almost did not answer, but something made him hit the accept button. Hello? Hello, James. Veronica's voice. Sweet, calm, utterly normal sounding. I hear you've been busy today, creating quite a scene at the funeral. James's hand tightened on the phone so hard the case creaked. Martinez, who could hear the call through the car's speakers, went very still. Where is she, Veronica? Where's Kate? Kate, Veronica laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You mean Victoria, don't you? No, wait, that's me. It's so confusing, isn't it? All these names, all these identities. Do you even know who anyone really is anymore, James? Where is my wife? Your wife, which one? Catherine, who you killed with your negligence? Or Kate, who destroyed my entire life? You have such terrible luck with wives, James. Maybe you should stop collecting them. Martinez was already tracing the call, typing rapidly on her phone. She held up 5 fingers. Keep her talking for 5 minutes. What do you want? James forced his voice to stay level. Money? I'll give you whatever you want. Money. Veronica's voice dripped contempt. Do I look like I need your money? I want what she took from me. My career, my reputation, my future. Kate Morrison walked away from our company's collapse and left me to rot. Then she married you and lived happily ever after while I had nothing. Nothing. So you killed Catherine? You murdered my first wife? Silence on the line. Then, Catherine was in the way, just like Kate is in the way, just like everyone who stands between me and what I deserve is in the way. You're insane. I'm justice, James. I'm what happens when someone takes everything from you and faces no consequences. But don't worry, you'll understand soon. You'll know exactly how it feels to have everything ripped away, to be left with nothing but loss and rage and the understanding that the world doesn't care about your pain. If you hurt her, you'll what? Come after me? You couldn't even protect her. You were too busy building your empire, making your billions, patting yourself on the back for being such a success. You never even saw me coming, never questioned who I really was, never asked why a woman like me would be interested in a grieving widower with a young daughter. You were too desperate for someone to fill the Catherine-shaped hole in your life. Every word was a knife, precise and deep. James wanted to scream, to rage, to reach through the phone and destroy her. But he kept his voice steady because Martinez was still typing, still tracing, and they needed more time. Tell me where Kate is, please. If there's anything human left in you, tell me where my wife is. Oh, James, Veronica's voice softened into something almost affectionate. You still don't understand. This isn't about Kate. This is about you. You need to lose everything the way I lost everything. You need to feel that emptiness, that void. Only then will we be equal. Only then will justice be served. You haven't lost everything yet, James said. You're free. You can walk away, disappear. I'll give you money to start over somewhere else. Just tell me where Kate is and walk away. Martinez held up 2 fingers. 2 more minutes. Walk away? Veronica laughed again. Why would I walk away when I'm finally winning? Do you know how long I've planned this, James? 3 years. 3 years of surgery and training and building a new identity. 3 years of studying you, learning your patterns, figuring out exactly how to make you trust me. And it worked. It all worked. You married me. Let me into your home. Let me near your precious daughter. Ice flooded James's veins. You stay away from Emma. Emma, such a sweet child. She looks so much like Catherine. I wonder if she'll remember her mother when she grows up. Or will she only remember the stepmother who made her life hell? If you touch my daughter, relax, James, Emma is perfectly safe. For now, I have no interest in children. My quarrel is with Kate and with you. Speaking of which, I believe our time is up. Wait, you have 48 hours, Veronica said. Her voice had gone cold again, businesslike. 48 hours to find Kate before I decide she's suffered enough. I'll be in touch with instructions. Oh, and James, don't bother tracing this call. I'm not stupid. The line went dead. Martinez swore under her breath. She was moving, switching sectors. We got a general area, but nothing specific. Southeast Portland, somewhere near the river. That's 20 square miles. James sat frozen, Veronica's words echoing in his head. 48 hours. 2 days to find Kate before what? Before Veronica killed her? Before she moved her somewhere unreachable? Before this nightmare escalated into something even worse? A small voice came from the back seat. Mr. Morrison, are you okay? He looked in the mirror at Mia Chen, this 7-year-old girl who had somehow become central to everything. I don't know, Mia, I honestly don't know. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, same as the call. He opened it and felt his blood turn to ice. It was a photograph. Kate, sitting in what looked like a dark room, hands bound, eyes red from crying but alive. Alive and terrified and desperately hoping for rescue. Below the photo, one line of text. Tick-tock, Daddy. Night had fallen over Portland by the time James Morrison returned to his estate in the West Hills. The sprawling 6-bedroom house sat on 3 acres of manicured grounds, all glass and steel and contemporary architecture that had won awards when it was built 5 years ago. It was the kind of house that appeared in design magazines, that other wealthy people toured and envied. It was supposed to be a sanctuary, a fortress, a place where his family was safe from the world. Now it felt like a mausoleum, cold, empty, haunted by the ghost of normalcy that had died the moment that casket opened to reveal nothing inside. James pulled his Mercedes into the circular driveway and sat for a moment, engine running, hands still gripping the wheel. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see lights on in the living room. His mother would be there with Emma, probably trying to explain the unexplainable, trying to shield his daughter from the nightmare their lives had become. He needed to go inside, needed to see Emma, hold her, promise her that everything would be okay even though he had no idea if that was true. But first he needed a moment, just one moment to fall apart where no one could see. His phone sat on the passenger seat, screen dark now, but the image burned into his brain. Kate bound and terrified in some dark room. Kate who had been missing for 3 weeks, but was only declared dead 4 days ago. Kate who he had mourned and grieved and tried to accept losing. Kate who was alive. Alive and suffering and running out of time. 48 hours. Veronica had given him 48 hours. No, not Veronica. Victoria Hayes. The woman who had destroyed her own fashion company through bad decisions and then blamed Kate for having the sense to walk away. The woman who had disappeared after the bankruptcy, who everyone assumed had left Portland, started over somewhere else, accepted her losses and moved on. Except Victoria Hayes had not moved on. She had transformed, changed her face through surgery, changed her name through legal filing, changed her entire identity for one singular purpose: revenge. Not the hot, impulsive kind, but the cold, calculated variety that took years to plan and execute. She had researched James Morrison, studied his patterns, learned his weaknesses. She had known that he was a widower, still drowning in guilt over Catherine's death. She had positioned herself at that charity gala 2 years ago, had orchestrated their meeting to look like chance, had played the role of the perfect woman at the perfect time. And James, lonely and tired and desperate for someone to share his life with, had fallen for it completely. Had married her after 6 months, had brought her into his home, given her access to Kate, to Emma, to everything he held precious, had handed his enemy the keys to his kingdom without ever suspecting a thing. The self-recrimination was a physical weight, crushing down on his chest until breathing hurt. But he could not afford to indulge it right now. Self-hatred was a luxury for after Kate was safe. Right now he needed to think, to plan, to be useful. His phone buzzed. Text from Detective Martinez. Forensics back from the house. Multiple DNA samples. Hair fibers match Kate Morrison. Fingerprints confirm Marcus Cole present at the scene. Still working on timeline of when the location was abandoned. Call me when you can. James typed back. At home with my daughter. We'll call in 1 hour. He climbed out of the Mercedes, his legs stiff from sitting, his back aching with tension. The November air was sharp and cold, carrying the promise of rain. He walked to the front door, each step feeling like he was moving through deep water. Inside, he could hear voices. His mother, Helen, speaking softly. Emma asking questions in that high-pitched 6-year-old way. He opened the door and stepped into his home. Emma saw him first. She was sitting on the leather sofa in the living room, still wearing her black funeral dress, but with her shoes kicked off, her blonde hair coming loose from its braid. When she spotted James in the doorway, her face lit up with relief so profound it made his heart crack. "Daddy!" She launched herself off the couch and ran to him, small arms wrapping around his waist, face pressed against his stomach. "Daddy, Grandma said Mommy might not be dead. Is that true? Is Mommy coming home?" James knelt down, bringing himself eye level with his daughter. Emma's face was streaked with tears, old and new. Her eyes red-rimmed, but so full of hope, it physically hurt to look at. "I don't know yet, sweetheart," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "But I'm going to do everything I can to find her. I promise you that." "But she's alive? The little girl at the funeral said she was alive." "Yes, I think she's alive." Emma threw her arms around his neck, squeezing so tight he could barely breathe. "I knew it. I knew Mommy wouldn't leave me. I told Grandma, but she said I had to accept it, but I knew." Over Emma's shoulder, James met his mother's eyes. Helen Morrison looked like she had aged 10 years in the past 6 hours. She sat in the wing chair by the fireplace, still wearing her black Chanel, but with her hair disheveled, her carefully applied makeup smudged. When she looked at her son, James saw fear and grief and a determination that reminded him she had raised him to be strong, to fight, to never give up. "Mom," he said quietly, "can you take Emma up to bed? I need to make some calls." Helen nodded and stood, moving with the careful precision of someone holding themselves together through pure will. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you into your pajamas. You can sleep in Grandma's room tonight." "But I want to wait for Mommy." Emma's voice went high and stubborn. "Mommy isn't coming home tonight," James said gently. "But hopefully soon, very soon. Right now I need you to be brave and let Grandma take care of you. Can you do that?" Emma nodded reluctantly. She kissed James's cheek, her lips soft and small, then took Helen's hand and let herself be led upstairs. James watched them go, memorizing the sight of his daughter safe and whole because he had learned the hard way that nothing was guaranteed, that the people you loved could be ripped away in an instant. When they disappeared down the upstairs hallway, James walked to his study. The room was all dark wood and leather, shelves lined with books he never had time to read, a massive desk that had cost more than most cars. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch from the decanter on the sidebar, downed it in one burning swallow, then poured another that he carried to the desk. His laptop sat there, sleeping. He woke it up and opened a secure messaging app, typing quickly. Marcus Cole, former employee, need everything. Financial records, phone logs, known associates, current location. Money is no object, 24 hours. He sent it to 3 different private investigation firms, the kind that did not ask questions and delivered results. Then he opened another window and started searching for information on Victoria Hayes himself. Public records, social media, anything that might give him insight into where she would hide Kate, what her next move might be. His phone rang. Detective Martinez. Mr. Morrison, I'm glad you called. We've located Marcus Cole. James sat up straighter. Where? He's at a motel off I-5 about 30 miles south. We've got the place under surveillance. I need to know if you want us to bring him in now or wait and see if he leads us to Victoria. Bring him in now. If he knows where Kate is, I want that information immediately. Understood. We'll move within the hour. But Mr. Morrison, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he doesn't know. Victoria strikes me as the type who compartmentalizes. She might have kept Marcus in the dark about her larger plans. Then we make him tell us what he does know, whatever it takes. Martinez was quiet for a moment. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that last part. Sir, I understand your frustration, but we have to do this by the book. Anything we obtain through coercion won't be admissible. It won't help your wife. James closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. She was right. He knew she was right. But every cell in his body was screaming to do something, anything, to take action instead of sitting here helpless while Kate suffered. Fine, he said, but I want to be there when you question him. I want to look him in the eye. That's not standard procedure. I don't care about your procedures. That man worked for me for 8 years. I trusted him. Then he helped kidnap my wife. I'm going to be in that room, detective. You can allow it, or I can call the mayor and the police commissioner and make enough noise that you'll have no choice. Your decision. Another silence. Then Martinez sighed. You can observe through the glass. That's as far as I'm willing to bend. I'll take it. Where and when? Central Precinct, 2 hours. And Mr. Morrison, don't make me regret this. She hung up before he could respond. James drained his second scotch and stood, already moving. 2 hours. He had 2 hours to put on a suit that said powerful and in control, 2 hours to construct a mask that would hide the desperation and rage churning underneath. He climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, the room he had shared with Veronica for 2 years. The space felt contaminated now, every surface a reminder of how thoroughly he had been deceived. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her perfume bottles lined the bathroom counter. Her books sat on the nightstand, bookmark halfway through, like she might come back any moment to finish the chapter. James wanted to destroy it all, wanted to tear her clothes to shreds, smash the perfume bottles, burn every trace of her presence in his home. But that was emotion talking, rage that would accomplish nothing. Instead, he stripped off his funeral suit and stepped into the shower, turning the water as hot as he could stand, letting it pound against his shoulders and back until his skin was red. When he got out, he dressed carefully. Navy suit, white shirt, silver tie, the uniform of power and control. He combed his hair, shaved the stubble from his jaw, looked at himself in the mirror, and barely recognized the man staring back. When had he gotten so old? When had the lines around his eyes gotten so deep? When had the gray at his temples spread so far? Catherine's death had aged him. He knew that. Grief and guilt had carved years into his face. But this was different. This was watching yourself be played for a fool. This was understanding that for 2 years you had shared your bed with a monster and never seen the truth. A soft knock at the door. Helen's voice, tentative. James, can I come in? It's open, Mom. She entered, still in her funeral clothes, looking impossibly small and tired. Emma's asleep. Finally. I gave her some chamomile tea and read her 3 stories. She kept asking when Kate would come home. What did you tell her? I told her we were doing everything we could. I told her to hope and pray and be brave. What else could I say? James sat on the edge of the bed and his mother joined him, their shoulders touching. For a long moment, they just sat in silence, drawing comfort from proximity. I should have known, James said finally, about Veronica, about who she really was. There were signs, small things that didn't add up, but I was so grateful to not be alone anymore that I ignored them. You can't blame yourself for being human, for wanting companionship, for trying to build a life again after Catherine died. Catherine, James said the name carefully, like it might shatter. Mom, I need to tell you something. Something I learned today. He told her about the USB drive, about Mia's mother being Catherine's nurse, about the recording that supposedly proved someone had threatened Catherine before the accident. Helen listened without interrupting, her face going progressively paler. You think Victoria killed Catherine too? Helen's voice was barely a whisper. I think it's possible. I think Victoria has been obsessed with destroying my family for years. Catherine was married to me. She was in the way. So Victoria removed her. But why wait 5 years? Why not go after Kate immediately? Because she's smart. Because she wanted it to look natural, unconnected. She gave it time, changed her appearance, became someone new. Then she got close to me, married me, earned Kate's trust. And when the moment was right, she struck. Helen pressed her hands to her mouth, muffling a sob. That means Catherine's death wasn't an accident. That means you've been carrying guilt for 5 years over something that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I was driving that night. I was distracted. Even if Victoria tampered with the car somehow, I still could have prevented it if I'd been paying attention. James Morrison, you listen to me. Helen grabbed his face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. You are not responsible for the evil that other people do. You're not responsible for Victoria's madness, or her revenge, or her manipulation. You're a good man who got caught in the crossfire of someone else's psychosis. So stop punishing yourself and focus on saving Kate. Do you hear me? James nodded, not trusting his voice. Helen pulled him into a hug, and he let himself be held, let himself be 7 years old again, and safe in his mother's arms, just for a moment. Then he pulled back, wiped his eyes, and stood. I have to go. Detective Martinez arrested Marcus Cole. They're bringing him in for questioning. You're going to be there? I'm going to find out what he knows. Then I'm going to find my wife. Be careful, son. Victoria is dangerous. She's already killed at least once, maybe twice. Don't give her a reason to kill again. James kissed his mother's forehead and left without answering, because they both knew that if it came down to it, if Victoria threatened Kate or Emma, he would do whatever was necessary. Consequences be damned. The drive to Central Precinct took 20 minutes through downtown Portland's sparse late-evening traffic. The police station was a brutal concrete structure that had been built in the 70s and never renovated, all harsh angles and small windows that made it look more like a prison than a public building. James parked in the visitor lot and walked through the front entrance, his expensive suit drawing looks from the uniformed officers manning the desk. Detective Martinez met him in the lobby. She looked exhausted, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, coffee stains on her wrinkled shirt. But her eyes were sharp, focused, the eyes of someone who would not quit until the job was done. He's in interrogation room 2, she said without preamble. He's been advised of his rights, he's declined a lawyer, says he wants to cooperate. Do you believe him? I believe he's scared. Whether that translates to useful cooperation remains to be seen. Come on. She led him through a maze of hallways, past offices and conference rooms and holding cells, to a small viewing room with a one-way mirror. Beyond the glass, James could see Marcus Cole sitting at a metal table, his hands folded in front of him, his face pale with fear. Marcus looked older than James remembered. The man was only 45, but hard living had added years. His face was lined and stubbled, his gray hoodie stained, his eye bloodshot and darting. He kept glancing at the door like he expected someone to burst through at any moment. Martinez's partner, a younger detective named Chen, who James had met briefly at the house, sat across from Marcus. He had a folder open in front of him, papers spread across the table. Mr. Cole, Chen was saying, his voice professionally neutral. You understand why you're here? Because of Kate Morrison. Marcus's voice was rough, like he had been shouting or crying. Because I helped Victoria. God help me, I helped that crazy woman. James's hands clenched into fists. Hearing Marcus admit it, hearing the confirmation that his former employee had betrayed him so thoroughly, made the rage flare white hot. Tell me about Victoria Hayes, Chen continued. How did she recruit you? Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. It was after Mr. Morrison fired me. I was angry, felt like I'd been treated unfairly. I'd worked for that family for 8 years and got let go over one mistake. So when Victoria approached me at a bar downtown, started talking to me, bought me drinks, I listened. What did she tell you? She said James Morrison had ruined her life, that his wife Kate had destroyed her business and left her with nothing. She said they deserved to suffer, to lose everything the way she lost everything. And I was drunk and angry and stupid enough to agree. So you agreed to help her kidnap Kate Morrison? No, Marcus looked up sharply. That's not what she said at first. She just wanted me to watch Kate, follow her, report her routines. She said she was building a legal case, that she needed evidence. I thought it was just surveillance. I didn't know she was planning to. He trailed off, his face crumbling. In the viewing room, James watched without sympathy. Marcus had made his choices. Whatever consequences came from those choices, he had earned them. When did you realize it wasn't just surveillance? Chen asked. About 3 weeks ago, Victoria called me late at night, said she needed help with something urgent, told me to meet her at that house on Everett Street. When I got there, she had Kate. Kate was unconscious, drugged, I think. Victoria said we were going to keep her there for a few days, just to scare James Morrison, make him sweat. Then we'd let her go. But you didn't let her go. No, because Victoria kept changing the plan. First it was 3 days, then a week. Then she started talking about making it permanent, about making the world think Kate was dead so they'd stop looking. I told her that was insane, told her I wanted out. But she said if I backed out now, she'd tell the police I was the one who kidnapped Kate, that she had evidence placing me at the scene, that I'd go to prison for the rest of my life while she walked free. Chen leaned forward. So she blackmailed you into continuing? Yes, and I'm a coward, detective. I'm a weak, pathetic coward who went along with it because I was more afraid of prison than I was of doing the right thing. Where is Kate Morrison now? Marcus shook his head. I don't know. I swear to God, I don't know. Victoria moved her 3 days ago. Wouldn't tell me where. Just said I'd done my part and she'd handle the rest. But you must have some idea. You helped Victoria for weeks. You must have heard something. She mentioned a cabin, said she had a place in the mountains where no one would ever find them, but she never told me exactly where. I asked once and she nearly took my head off. Said the less I knew, the better. James felt his heart sink. A cabin in the mountains. That could be anywhere. Oregon had millions of acres of forest land, thousands of remote cabins scattered through the Cascades. Finding one specific location without more information would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Detective Martinez must have seen something in his face because she touched his arm gently. We'll find it. We'll use property records, cross-reference Victoria's financials, check for any land purchases or rentals in her name. That will take days. I don't have days. I have less than 48 hours. Then we'll work fast. In the interrogation room, Chen was still pressing Marcus. Think carefully, Mr. Cole. Did Victoria ever mention specific locations? Towns? Highways? Anything that might narrow the search? Marcus closed his eyes, clearly trying to remember. She said something once about Cascade Locks, said it was a beautiful area. But I don't know if that's where the cabin is or if she was just making conversation. Cascade Locks. A small mine about 40 miles east of Portland, right on the Columbia River Gorge. It was a starting point at least. Better than nothing. Chen made a note. What about Kate's condition? The last time you saw her, how was she? Physically okay. Victoria wasn't hurting her, not like beating her or anything. But psychologically? Marcus shook his head. Kate was breaking down. Being held captive for weeks, not knowing if she'd ever see her family again. Listening to Victoria talk about her revenge plans. It was torture. Mental torture. James's vision went red at the edges. Kate suffering for weeks while he planned her funeral, while he mourned her, while he failed completely to protect the woman he loved. "I need to get in there," he said to Martinez. "I need to talk to him." "No, absolutely not. You're too emotional and you'll compromise the interrogation." "Then get him to tell you where that cabin is. Make him remember. Use whatever leverage you have, because every minute we waste, Kate is suffering." Martinez studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded and left the viewing room. A few seconds later, she entered the interrogation room, whispered something to Chen, then took his place across from Marcus. "Mr. Cole, I'm Detective Martinez. I'm going to be very honest with you right now. Your cooperation so far has been noted and will be taken into account. But if Kate Morrison dies because you failed to give us information that could save her, you'll be charged with murder one. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison with no possibility of parole. Is that clear?" Marcus went even paler. "I'm telling you everything I know. I swear." "Then think harder. Close your eyes and walk me through every conversation you had with Victoria about locations. Every offhand comment, every detail." Marcus closed his eyes, his face scrunched up in concentration. Seconds ticked by. Then his eyes flew open. "Wait, there was something. Victoria was on the phone once, about 2 weeks ago. I wasn't supposed to be listening, but I heard her talking to someone. She mentioned a cross street, said to turn right at Eagle Creek Road. I remember because I thought it was an odd name." Martinez pulled out her phone and started typing. "Eagle Creek Road, that's in the Cascade Locks area. Heads up into the mountains. There are dozens of cabins up there, but it gives us a zone to search." She looked at James through the one-way glass and gave a small nod. They had something. Not much, but something. The interrogation continued for another hour, Chen and Martinez extracting every possible detail from Marcus Cole's memory. By the end, they had a rough timeline, a general location, and confirmation that Victoria Hayes was working alone. No other accomplices, no backup plan. Just one woman, driven by rage and revenge, holding Kate Morrison somewhere in the mountains east of Portland. When they finally finished, Martinez returned to the viewing room where James had been pacing like a caged animal. "We're organizing a search," she said. "I've got the sheriff's department mobilizing deputies familiar with that area. We'll have helicopters up at first light, search teams on the ground. If Kate is anywhere near Eagle Creek Road, we'll find her. First light is hours away. I'm not waiting. Mr. Morrison, going up there in the dark is suicide. Those mountain roads are treacherous even in daylight. And if Victoria sees you coming, if she feels cornered, she might do something desperate. She's already desperate. She's already cornered, and my wife is running out of time." James, Martinez used his first name for the first time, her voice softening. "I understand your need to act, but acting recklessly won't save Kate. It will just get you killed and leave your daughter without any parents at all. Let us do our job. Go home. Be with Emma. Let us bring Kate back to you." James wanted to argue, wanted to get in his car and drive into those mountains right now, search every cabin until he found the right one. But Martinez was right. Charging in blind would accomplish nothing, would possibly make things worse. "How long until first light?" 6 hours. Search teams mobilize at 0500. We'll have eyes on the area by 0530. 6 hours, 360 minutes, 21,600 seconds for Kate to suffer. For Victoria to change her mind, move locations, hurt Kate, end this in the worst possible way. But he had no choice. He had to trust the system, had to trust that the police knew what they were doing, had to believe that Kate would hold on for 6 more hours. "Call me the second you have anything," he told Martinez. "I don't care what time it is. You call me." "I will, I promise." James left the precinct and drove home through streets that were nearly empty, now past midnight, having emptied the roads of everyone but insomniacs and shift workers. His house was dark when he arrived except for a single light burning in the living room. Helen, keeping vigil, refusing to sleep until there was news. He found her in the kitchen, sitting at the island with a cup of tea gone cold in front of her. She looked up when he entered, hope and fear warring in her expression. "Anything?" "They think they know the area where Kate is being held. They're mounting a search at dawn, 6 hours from now." Helen nodded slowly. "Then we wait." Then we wait. James poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, too wired to sit, too exhausted to stand properly. His phone sat on the granite beside him, silent and mocking. No more messages from Victoria. No more photographs. Nothing but terrible waiting. "Tell me about Kate," Helen said suddenly. "Tell me about when you first met her." James looked at his mother, surprised. "Wait, because we need to remember who we're fighting for. We need to hold on to hope. So tell me about Kate." And so James did. He told his mother about meeting Kate at a technology conference 6 years ago, back when she was still building Morrison and Hayes Couture with Victoria. How she had been giving a presentation on sustainable fashion and technology integration. How her passion had been magnetic, her intelligence obvious, her laugh infectious. He told her about their first date, a simple dinner that had stretched into 4 hours of conversation. About realizing that for the first time since Catherine died, he could imagine building a life with someone. About Kate meeting Emma and the instant connection between them, like they had been waiting for each other. He told her about their wedding 2 years ago, small and intimate, just family and close friends. About Kate promising to love Emma like her own daughter. About feeling for the first time in 5 years like his family might be whole again. And as he talked, as he remembered, James felt something shift inside him. The rage was still there. The fear was still there. But underneath it all was love. Deep, abiding, unshakable love for the woman who had brought light back into his life. The woman who was suffering now because of that love. "We're going to get her back," Helen said firmly. "We're going to bring Kate home, and then we're going to make sure Victoria Hayes never hurts anyone ever again." James nodded, his phone buzzed, and he grabbed it instantly, heart leaping. But it was not Martinez. It was Mia Chen's grandmother, a number he had added earlier. "Mr. Morrison, this is Wang Chen, Mia's grandmother. I'm so sorry to bother you at this hour, but Mia asked me to call. She remembered something. Something on the USB drive her mother left. She thinks it might be important." "What is it?" "A conversation. The recording her mother made. Mia listened to part of it tonight. She said the woman who threatened Mrs. Catherine mentioned a place, a family cabin. Victoria Hayes told Catherine that someday she would pay for her betrayal, that she would understand what it meant to lose everything. And she said when that day came, Victoria would take her somewhere no one could hear her scream. Somewhere she went as a child, a cabin her grandfather built." James's pulse quickened. "Did she say where? Did she mention a location?" "Mia is not certain. The recording is hard to hear, but she thinks the woman said something about a creek, about eagles. She remembers because her mother used to take her to see eagles at the gorge. Eagle Creek, the same location Marcus had remembered. It was not proof, but it was confirmation. Victoria Hayes had a family cabin near Eagle Creek Road, and that was where she was holding Kate. Mrs. Chen, thank you. Thank Mia for me. Tell her she may have just saved a life." He hung up and immediately called Detective Martinez. She answered on the first ring, sounding wide awake despite the late hour. "Morrison, what is it?" "I know where Kate is. Victoria Hayes has a family cabin near Eagle Creek Road. Her grandfather built it. It's the place she's using." "How do you know this?" "The USB drive. The recording from 5 years ago. Victoria mentioned it when she threatened Catherine. We need to pull property records for the Hayes family. Find out what they own near Cascade Locks." "I'm on it. Give me 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. James paced the kitchen while Helen watched anxiously, neither of them speaking, both of them holding their breath. When Martinez called back, her voice was tight with excitement. "Found it. Property records show a cabin owned by Harold Hayes, Victoria's grandfather. He died 4 years ago. The property transferred to Victoria. It's been sitting empty since his death, according to tax records. Remote location, 3 miles up Eagle Creek Road. That has to be it. I'm coming with you." "Mr. Morrison, Don't argue with me, detective. That's my wife. I'm coming. You can put me in a tactical vest and keep me behind your officers, but I will be there when you find her." Non-negotiable. Martinez sighed. "Fine, but you follow orders and you stay back. If you compromise this operation, I'll have you arrested for obstruction. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear. When do we leave?" I'm mobilizing the team now. We'll be at your location in 20 minutes. Be ready. James ended the call and turned to his mother. They found her. They found where Victoria is keeping Kate. Helen stood and hugged him fiercely. Bring her home, James. Bring our girl home. I will, I promise. He ran upstairs and changed quickly into dark clothes, practical boots, a heavy jacket. He stopped by Emma's room where she slept peacefully, unaware that her world was about to change again. He kissed her forehead gently. Mommy's coming home, baby girl, he whispered. Daddy's going to bring her home. 20 minutes later, 3 police vehicles pulled up to the Morrison estate. James climbed into the back of one, a tactical van full of officers in body armor carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a war zone. Detective Martinez sat beside him, her face grim and focused. The cabin is 45 minutes from here, she said. We go in at 0400, 1 hour before sunrise. Element of surprise is crucial. If Victoria sees us coming, this could go bad fast. James nodded, his throat too tight to speak. 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, he would know. Would see Kate with his own eyes. Would hold her or lose her forever. The convoy moved through the dark city, heading east toward the mountains. As they drove, the sky began to lighten incrementally, black fading to deep blue. By the time they reached Cascade Locks, the first hints of dawn were touching the horizon. They turned onto Eagle Creek Road and began climbing into the mountains. The road was narrow and winding, trees pressing close on both sides. The river gorge opening up to their left with views that would have been breathtaking in any other circumstance. 3 miles up, the convoy stopped. We go on foot from here, Martinez said. Vehicles will give away our position. The cabin is half a mile ahead. The officers exited the van silently, checking weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. Someone handed James a vest that he strapped on with shaking hands. Then they moved into the trees, a column of armed professionals and one desperate husband, advancing through the pre-dawn darkness toward a confrontation that would change everything. The cabin appeared through the trees like something from a nightmare. Small and dark, no lights visible, sitting in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. Smoke rose from a chimney, proof that someone was inside. James's heart hammered so hard, he thought everyone must be able to hear it. The tactical team spread out surrounding the structure. Martinez raised her hand, counting down on her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Police! Search warrant! Come out with your hands up! Her voice shattered the mountain silence. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then the cabin door flew open and Victoria Hayes appeared, holding a gun, her face twisted with rage. And behind her, visible through the open door, James saw Kate, bound to a chair, live. Everything happened at once. Officers shouting commands. Victoria raising her weapon. James lunging forward before anyone could stop him, screaming his wife's name. A gunshot cracked through the dawn air. Not from Victoria's weapon, but from Detective Martinez's service pistol, aimed high, a warning shot that splintered bark from the pine tree beside the cabin door. Drop the weapon, now! Victoria froze, her gun still pointed toward the officers, her face a mask of rage and desperation. Behind her, Kate struggled against her bindings, her eyes finding James across the clearing. Even from 30 feet away, he could see the hope blazing in her face, the relief, the fear. You can't have her, Victoria screamed. She took everything from me. Everything. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos, cold and professional. Victoria Hayes, you're surrounded. There's no way out. Put down the gun and step away from Mrs. Morrison. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. The world balanced on a knife edge. Then Victoria's face crumpled, the rage dissolving into something that looked almost like grief. Her hand trembled. The gun wavered. I just wanted, she whispered, her voice breaking. I just wanted him to see me, to love me, but he never did. I was always just a replacement for Catherine. Always second, always nothing. James stepped forward, hands raised, ignoring Martinez's sharp command to stay back. Victoria, please. This isn't about Kate. This isn't about me. This is about you deciding what happens next. You can end this. Right now, let her go. Victoria's eyes met his, searching for something, anything that might justify the years of planning, the transformation, the revenge. She found nothing. just a man who had never seen her as anything but a convenient solution to loneliness. The gun fell from her hand, hitting the wooden porch with a dull thud. "I'm tired," she said simply. "I'm so tired." Officers moved instantly, surrounding Victoria, pulling her away from the door, securing her hands behind her back. She did not resist. She looked almost relieved, like a burden she had carried for years had finally been lifted. James ran to Kate. His hands shook as he worked at the ropes binding her wrists, his fingers clumsy with adrenaline and emotion. The moment she was free, Kate threw her arms around his neck, her whole body shaking with sobs. "I knew you'd come," she gasped against his shoulder. "I never stopped believing. Never." "I'm sorry," James said, the words pouring out, years of guilt and fear and love tangled together. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry." "Stop." Kate pulled back, framing his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. "You found me. That's all that matters. You found me, and you brought me home." Behind them, Victoria was being led to a police vehicle. She turned once, looking back at James and Kate, holding each other in the doorway of the cabin. Her face showed no anger now, just emptiness. "Take care of each other," she called out, her voice strange and distant. "Don't waste what you have. I wasted everything." Then she was gone, swallowed by the backseat of the cruiser, and James and Kate were alone in a world that suddenly felt new, reborn, full of possibilities that had nearly been stolen forever. Martinez approached, giving them space but needing information. "Mrs. Morrison, we'll need your statement, but first let's get you checked by the paramedics." Kate nodded but did not let go of James's hand. She would never let go again. As the sun finally broke over the Cascade Mountains, painting the clearing in shades of gold and amber, James Morrison held his wife and understood with perfect clarity what Mia Chen had done. That 7-year-old girl with her faded dress and her mother's wisdom had spoken truth when silence would have been easier, had stood up when others looked away. She had saved Kate's life, but more than that, she had saved their family. And somewhere back in Portland, Emma was waking up in her grandmother's arms, about to learn that miracles, real miracles, sometimes happen to people who refuse to give up hope. The end. Epilogue. 6 months later, on a bright May morning, the Morrison family stood together at Rose Garden Cemetery. Not at a grave, but at the spot where Mia Chen had changed everything. A small bronze plaque had been installed on the headstone where Mia had hidden that November day. It read simply, "Where silence was broken, where truth was spoken, November 18th, 2020. Emma held Mia's hand, the two girls inseparable now, sisters in everything but blood. Kate stood between James and Helen, whole and healthy and working 3 days a week at a foundation she had started for victims of psychological abuse. Mia's grandmother Wang stood with them, proud and quiet, watching her granddaughter, who had become a symbol of courage in a city that would never forget what she had done. "Thank you," James said to Mia, kneeling down to her level one more time. "For everything, for your bravery, for your truth." Mia smiled, that same solemn smile she had worn at the funeral. "My mama always said the truth matters. I just did what she taught me." "Your mama," Kate said softly, "raised an extraordinary daughter." They left flowers at the plaque, white lilies, the same ones that had adorned the empty casket, but this time they meant something different. Not mourning, remembrance, gratitude. As they walked back to the car, Emma skipped ahead with Mia, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. Kate leaned against James, his arms solid and warm around her shoulders. "We're going to be okay," she said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "Yes," James agreed, "we are." And somewhere in a women's correctional facility 200 miles away, Victoria Hayes sat in her cell and finally let go of the rage that had consumed her. She would spend the rest of her life behind bars, but in the letting go, she found something unexpected. Peace. Truth had won, as it always does, as it always will, when someone is brave enough to speak it.